Evening, everyone. Welcome in. It is Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. This is number 7 for us. I'm Josh Elmer right here with Hawkeyes Wire of USA Today Sports. Check out all of my work at hawkeyeswire.com. My buddy, Mr. Chris Meglio, well, you could see. He is unfortunately not with me this evening. Chris will be back next week. I'm not sure what Chris has going on tonight, but go follow Chris Meglio, my partner, at Chris_Meglio. What's up, everybody? Welcome in Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. You can see the setup here tonight is obviously a little different from the backdrop that I have typically had. Just moved in. The wife and I bought our first home this past week, and so we're still moving things in. So I apologize if there's a little bit of an echo. The backdrop obviously is not totally put together tonight, but we're happy to be with you on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live, and hope everybody has had a wonderful Memorial Day so far. Our man, Mr. T. Hink, in the house. Good evening, gentlemen. Yes, Mr. Hink, what's up, buddy? Great to see you as well this evening. Before we get rolling, everybody like and subscribe to the channel. Share a super chat if you are so generous. So we have some news in the college football world that obviously will impact the Iowa Hawkeyes. We've got proposed college football playoff changes that are pretty interesting and have been spurred on by the Big Ten, by the SEC. But I guess before you get to any of the changes that are out there for the college football playoff, it sounds like a 16-team format could be just around the bend in short order. Let's start with the news from last week. The 12-team college football playoff format, as we know it, is going a direction that we thought that it should go, a natural, obvious direction for the college football playoff. The 12-team college football playoff, though, this will be the second season with a 12-team playoff, and probably very likely it seems like the final season with a 12-team college football playoff. It's moving to straight seeding this fall. So what does that mean? Well, it means that how the committee seeds things 1 through 12, obviously with the 4 highest ranked conference champions getting that access, the 5 conference champions. The top 4 seeds, though, will get the first round bye. So that is a departure from what we saw a season ago, where you had Arizona State and Boise State, those teams that were ranked outside the top 4 get those first round byes into the college football playoff. So you take a peek at what it looked like last season in college football, and those teams with the first round byes, it would have been number 1 seed Oregon out of the Big Ten champion from a season ago. And remember, Oregon got the unfortunate draw of seeing Ohio State right out of the chute. And, of course, it got sideways in a hurry on Oregon in that college football playoff game. But under what will now be the straight seeding model for college football in the second edition of this 12-team college football playoff, Oregon would be your top seed. They would, of course, have a bye, and they would wait on the winner of last season's bracket, the number 8 seed Indiana, the number 9 seed Boise State. The other top 4 seeds would have been number 2 Georgia, number 3 Texas, and number 4 Penn State. So just the graphic I'm looking at, working top to bottom for you, you would have had 12th-seeded Clemson versus number 5 seed Notre Dame. The winner there marching on to meet 4th-seeded Penn State. We told you number 8 Indiana, number 9 Boise State versus top-seeded Oregon. The champion out of the Big 12 last season would have been number 11 Arizona State versus 6th-seeded Ohio State. Marching on to the winner there to meet the Texas Longhorns. And then the final couple of teams, 7 and 10 last year, if it were under this now straight seeding model, would have been 7th-seeded Tennessee versus number 10 seed SMU, with the right to march on and meet number 2 Georgia, which to me, some folks say Some folks feel that you want to reward those conference champions those 4 highest ranked conference champions with that first round bye. It's a reasonable argument. I think for me, I think for me that the top 4 teams, this is why you play the regular season. This is why you go schedule big time games in the non-conference to prove that you deserve to be one of those 4 seeds. So to me, I was always in favor of the best 4 teams by the college football playoff selection committee standards. When they look at this thing and they say 1, 2, 3, 4, to me, I think, hey, those should be the teams that get the first round buys. And obviously that's the direction that now we're going with the straight seeding model coming this fall. So you don't have to wait on this. This will be in the upcoming college football playoff. The committee's top 4 teams with the top 4 seeds, they've got first round buys. The 10 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame athletic director Pete Bavacqua, they constitute the college football playoff management committee. They reached the unanimous agreement that was necessary to make that change this past Thursday afternoon. So if you're like probably a lot of people throughout the offseason, maybe you're in and out with college football, you're not following every piece of information that's out there, every little twist and turn, every happening. And of course, this is Memorial Day weekend. So there's a good chance you were with your friends and family or traveling to friends and family, maybe took that extra start to the weekend off of work and might have seen this bit of news go through the cracks on you last week. But so the 5 highest ranked conference champions, those are still guaranteed spots in the 12-team field. But those 4 highest ranked teams by the committee's discretion, they've got that first round bye. I say that to me, this format makes a lot of sense. I think it puts value on who the 4 best teams are throughout the course of the college football season. I think it encourages aggressive non-conference scheduling, which to me, I think is a positive item for college football. Obviously, as it pertains to the Iowa Hawkeyes, you hope that that Cy-Hawk game has a chance to enhance the early non-conference standing. And if you go win it for Iowa, if you go beat Iowa State, then you've got a chance to enhance your resume early, and you're rewarded with that non-conference game. Maybe down the road with some of the other rumblings out there, there will be another chance for the Iowa Hawkeyes to enhance their non-conference record in a hurry and their non-conference schedule, their non-conference ranking before you get into Big Ten play, the perception of the Iowa Hawkeyes, and we'll get to that in just a moment. I should tell you as well, everybody, please, you can follow us all over and get the audio portion of this Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live on any of your favorite audio podcasting platforms out there, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and iHeart. You can catch us on the audio side, anywhere you get podcasts, basically out there. And of course, we're happy to be with you on the Voice of College Football, Iowa, at the Voice of College Football right here on YouTube, coming to you live on a Monday of Memorial Day. I probably should have led with this off the top, but thank you to all of you that have served, and obviously we pay our respects on this day, Memorial Day, to those that gave the ultimate sacrifice in the great United States of America. So I hope all of you are having a wonderful Memorial Day out there. If you're with loved ones, if you saw loved ones, hope it was a great Memorial Day weekend for you out there. The college football playoff, a 12-team straight seeding model, that the breaking news from last week. Now there's some other rumblings out there that the Big Ten and the SEC, this has been reported before, that the Big Ten and the SEC are angling for the automatic qualifiers for both the Big Ten and SEC conferences, that there's a push. You had heard for the longest time over the course of last year and really last year into obviously this offseason, that a 14-team college football playoff was starting to maybe gain some steam. And then you started hearing rumblings over the last month or so, maybe couple of months, that a 16-team college football playoff model, that could be in the cards sooner rather than later. Well, we've got more news on that possible 16-team college football playoff. I read a piece over the weekend from Stuart Mandel of The Athletic, who one of the top reporters in college football. Probably, if you're following this college football channel, Iowa, at the voice of college football, you probably know who Stuart Mandel is as one of the top college football reporters. We'll get to his opinion in just a moment. He's not crazy about some of the changes that are out there that are being proposed. His headline, Big Ten SEC plans for college football playoff are only getting more nonsensical. So in February, the leaders of the Big Ten, the leaders of the SEC, they held a joint meeting in New Orleans where you probably started to first hear that college football playoff model of 14 teams, of 16 teams, that could be a possibility. One of the other items we had coming out of that meeting from back in New Orleans in February, I think it was in February where we got this news, was that you might start seeing crossover games between the Big Ten and the SEC as part of this jump for the college football playoff from the 12-team format to either a 14 or a 16-team format. Now, as part of that equation, if you were going to get that extra added crossover, Big Ten SEC crossover game, think of what we've seen at times with the, challenges in college basketball, where you have the crossover challenges, holiday classics, where everybody in the Big Ten plays everybody in the SEC, and you rotate through opponents over the course of a number of years. You don't see the same team year to year to year. That type of model coming to college football, where you get those crossover games between the Big Ten and the SEC. Now, that with the caveat that if that were to happen, the SEC would wind up on a level playing field to the Big Ten in terms of the number of conference games that it plays. Right now, of course, the SEC currently situated with an 8-game conference schedule, with a 14-team college football playoff, with a 16-team college football playoff. The SEC, in all likelihood, would expand its conference schedule to 9 games to mirror, to match what the Big Ten is currently playing right now, which, of course, is a 9-game conference schedule. We had heard as well that with the proposed 16-team college football playoff, with some of these changes to both the Big Ten and the SEC, that one of the items that both the Big Ten and the SEC wanted to add in were those play-in games, that the Big Ten and the SEC would have their 4 automatic qualifiers. You guarantee me, I'm the Big Ten, and I'm getting 4 teams in no matter what into this 16-team college football playoff. I'm the SEC, I'm getting 4 teams in no matter what into this college football playoff, which, as the big power brokers in college football, I know there's some feather ruffling out there from many Big 12 fans, ACC fans, and frankly, some college football purists, right, that just think that you should get into the college football playoff based on your own merit over the course of the season, that there shouldn't be a guaranteed 4 bids doled out to the Big Ten, a guaranteed 4 bids doled out to the SEC. That argument, I understand the frustration from Big 12 fans, from ACC fans, or just from old-time college football fans that just don't like that idea of there being guarantees to the Big Ten and the SEC. When you're the Big Ten and you're the SEC, you've got the most chips to play at the table. And the ratings of college football, you look at all of the top ratings games, and typically those are coming from Big Ten conference games, from SEC conference games. The highest rated games in college football coming from the Big Ten and the SEC. So when you've got that chip in your back pocket to play, and you've got the big revenue contracts, TV deals, grant of rights deals from all of the television partners that exist out there, you've got just, again, a little more leverage on your side. So the model that has started to gain some steam that has been proposed is what's described as a 4-4-2-2-1 +3 model. The Big Ten, the SEC, each 4 automatic qualifiers into this proposed 16-team college football playoff. The Big 12, the ACC, they've got their set of guarantees as well. The Big 12, the ACC, they would each have a pair of automatic qualifiers into the college football playoff. And then you've got what would be your old school group of 5 automatic qualify bid in there, your highest group of 5 conference champion. That's now a group of 6 champion if you want to get specifically specific. That's no longer your G5 champ. That's your group of 6, your other 6 conferences that aren't the Big Ten, aren't the SEC, aren't the Big 12, aren't the ACC. So 4 for the Big Ten, 4 for the SEC, 2 for the Big 12 and the ACC apiece, and then 1 to that highest ranked conference champion, highest ranked team outside of those 4 big power conferences, and then 3 at-large bids, which we'll see how the dust settles on a season. Obviously, this has been met with some resistance from many Big 12 fans, many ACC fans, and again, just college football fans out there that don't like the idea of the Big Ten and the SEC having those guaranteed 4 bids. And of course, from Brett Yormark and from Jim Phillips, I'm sure there's some resistance from the respective Big 12 and ACC commissioners, though I would say if you could get a couple of guaranteed automatic qualifying bids to the college football playoff, if you're the Big 12 and the ACC, that's not necessarily all bad when you bake in the opportunity for those 3 other at-larges out there. Obviously, if you're the Big Ten and the SEC under what's getting suggested out there with that potential non-conference crossover game in the mix as well, that would be what I would refer to everybody as stacking the deck. That sets it up to where, look, the Big Ten and the SEC, the schedule strength, it's just flat out better on most years because the depth of the conferences right now with what you've got in an 18-team Big Ten, what you've got in a 16-team SEC now, generally speaking, you're just getting better matchups throughout the season, that strength of schedule, your ranking. I know the college football playoff selection committee, we're led to believe that it's just sit down in a room and look at these teams, watch them on television, and then look at a couple of metrics and judge them on paper with serious discussion in the room. There are some over the years that have pushed back that the old school BCS component that, plug it into the computers and the computers would, based on the polls out there with a little bit of help, obviously, from the human polls, the computers combine it and boom, the computers give you your rankings and get you your BCS national championship game, right? That's the old school 1 versus 2 format to decide a national champion from my past, from your past out there in college football. There's some that have felt that maybe the college football playoff committee has more of some computer model data at their fingertips than maybe we've been led to believe over the years. And if that's the case, then obviously playing a Big Ten schedule, if you're the Iowa Hawkeyes, and if you can navigate it successfully, and then, oh, by the way, I toss an SEC crossover game with, if you keep the annual game versus Iowa State, that would be an interesting wrinkle in all of this if this moves in that direction where you get a 16-team college football playoff and you do get that crossover game between the Big Ten and the SEC. My hope, and I think most Hawkeye fans' hopes, I try not always to speak for fans. This is, of course, my opinion, but I would think most Iowa fans would feel this way. You want to keep that Cy-Hawk game, in-state rivalry game. I just think for college sports, we've at times lost too many of these. What's going on, I know it's not an in-state rivalry, but some of the discussion out there about USC maybe not wanting to play Notre Dame, I hate that. That doesn't sit right with me. The idea that USC and Notre Dame might not play each other, that sounds like complete shenanigans. So with a lot of these changes in college sports, and obviously I would sit there and argue for you that the scheduling for Iowa, you remove the Big Ten West, right? You take that out of the picture and you get a new look Big Ten for Iowa. Okay, that schedule, week in, week out, of course, obviously is more difficult for the Iowa Hawkeyes now, but it also gives you a chance to, again, enhance your resume so much with so much more ease than you had in the past. And man, the Big Ten, this way that it's set up right now, the revenue advantages that exist for a program like Iowa, what maybe over the course of a number of years that can do for Iowa football, that's a big time advantage for the Hawkeyes. But you hope, even with that challenging schedule that's laid in front of you, because look, it is more challenging what the Hawkeyes face now with the Big Ten West sort of. I mean, look, it's taken out of the equation. I know you still have and I'm happy that the Big Ten has done this for Iowa, where you get your Wisconsin, your Nebraska, your Minnesotas. I think those games matter. You want to keep those trophy games if you're a Hawkeye fan. I think for Big Ten fans, I would imagine many Wisconsin, Minnesota, Nebraska fans feel the same way, that those are games, those tradition games. You want to keep those. You want that Cy-Hawk game too. You want to keep that in your non-conference schedule. I do. If I'm setting this thing up, though, of course it is daunting. I want to keep that game because of the tradition that it presents. The Iowa State Cyclones right now are clearly the best version over an extended period of time that they've been in their history. So with Coach Campbell, what he's done for that program, that game from a non-conference value standpoint, I think is more valuable than ever before for Iowa. It's a good early season litmus test to figure out, hey, who are we? What are we? How far along are we before you get into the rigors of your Big Ten schedule? But that's a long-winded way to say that if you keep that Cy-Hawk game, if that's a part of your non-conference schedule, and oh, by the way, now I toss it an SEC crossover game at you every single season, man, that's a beast of a schedule that you're playing. You got Iowa State, you insert your SEC squad here. Maybe this also, another wrinkle that really hasn't been discussed a ton out there, and you wonder about it when you hear some of these items in college football, these changes that feel like there's a lot of steam, a lot of momentum behind them. Could this proposed Big Ten SEC crossover, in conjunction with the college football playoff moving from a 12-team format to, looks like we're jumping right past 14 and going to a 16-team model, could that open the door to SEC expansion? There's some folks that would like that carousel, that college football carousel, realignment carousel, to start, cycling back around again. There's, of course, folks at Florida State and at Clemson, and maybe your Miamis and North Carolinas privately of the world in the ACC, that although, of course, they've restructured things in the ACC with its grant of rights payouts to make it more stomachable for the Clemsons and Florida States, the college football power brokers that be in the ACC, the revenue generators of late based on the way that they've won and the big games that they've played in. They've been lining everybody else's pockets, right? At least that's probably how privately somebody, or publicly at times for Florida State, would tell you. Maybe a Big Ten SEC crossover, does that kind of open the door now? Does that open the door to the SEC saying, 16 doesn't match with 18 in terms of those annual crossover dates with the Big Ten and the SEC? Maybe you want to try to get to 18 a little bit quicker than initially thought. Again, that's something that I don't know. I haven't really seen a lot of discussion or talk about that out there. Is that maybe privately on the horizon as well? Well, the college football playoff, we've been talking about some of the changes that have arrived already to the college football playoff in the 2025 season. We know we've got a straight seeding model, and that meaning that the committees 1 through 4 teams, they're getting the first round bye. You've still got your 5 highest ranked conference champions getting in. So look, the Big Ten, the SEC champion, they're obviously into this thing, right? The strength of schedule there, they're guaranteed to be one of the top 5 conference champions, and probably the Big 12 and the ACC going to be in that mix as well. And then your highest ranked group of 6 champion, they're going to be getting into the college football playoff as that 5th highest ranked conference champion, but they're no longer automatically sharpied in to that first round bye. So that changes things, this straight seeding model going into this now 2025 college football season. We got that news last week, but there's some other news that started to break with it. I'm Josh Helmer here with you on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. So happy to have you guys hanging out with us on a Monday night right here on Memorial Day on Iowa at the Voice of College Football, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Share a super chat if you're so generous. That helps support myself and my partner, who is not with me tonight. He had another responsibility arrive tonight, so he couldn't be with me tonight. But give myself a follow on social media. I am at Josh on Ref, or you can follow my work, HawkeyesWire.com. Support me, support the team. We really appreciate you guys swinging by the website and, like us on Facebook over there too. Engage with us and share your thoughts on all of the happenings in Iowa Hawkeye athletics. My partner typically is Chris Meglio, at Chris_Meglio. Obviously, he's not in the house right now. Let's run down some of the comments before we roll forward tonight. Hawkeye Howard, what's up, my friend? Welcome to the program. He says, hey, fellow Hawkeye fans. Yes, what's up, Hawkeye fans? Welcome to the program tonight. My man, T. Hink, we showed this earlier. Hink, he's always hanging out with us. Good evening, Hink. Happy to have you along. And yes, tell your friends and family and the cashiers at Hy-Vee about the magic that we're bringing you right here on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Monday nights right here on Iowa at the Voice of College Football. Every Monday night at 6 o'clock. We have the eyes on the prize to start doing a call-in show, a second weekly show on Thursdays. Weeks that allow, I'd love to work it into a weekly occasion where we just Monday, Thursday at 6 o'clock have in Iowa dedicated, and obviously on a night like this, college football, college sports dedicated show, but with an Iowa slant to it every Monday and Thursday night. But obviously that's kind of scheduled depending out there. The chat, feel free to fill that up and we'll just roll with your comments over the next half hour or so as well. Hawkeye Howard, Iowa going 12-0, Big Ten champs and national champions. This is the year. Baby God himself told me. Well, that would be wonderful if the Hawkeyes could muster up one of those magical seasons. Maybe Gronowski coming aboard, some of the exciting things that Iowa has done and added offensively, some of the bits and bobs, if you want to say it, out of the transfer portal that they've added. I know they, outside of Gronowski, maybe don't have all of those splashy names out there. But Iowa, I think, has, with the transfer portal, addressed some of its needs. Howard have been filling up the chat. We'll just rip through all of your comments here. Iowa State won't be staying that game because Iowa State's going bankrupt. Yeah, it's tough sledding for the Big 12 and ACC schools out there. It'll be the next, 10, 15 years, and it might not even be as long as that, are going to be fascinating to follow in college athletics. What happens to some of these programs in the Big 12, in the ACC? How much can they support? Some of these non-revenue generating sports, the non-football and men's basketball. What happens to some of those sports out there? I think that is the probably not talked about as much reality in college sports, that probably at some point the bottom line is going to be the bottom line, and some of those other sports are going to be by the wayside. For Iowa fans, that's one of the beautiful things out there, that the Big Ten grant of rights deal, that's going to help, hopefully, Iowa navigate through this revenue share era, which, again, we're still waiting, right, for Judge Claudia Wilkin to ratify that thing out there and get the revenue share era, get that into place for the start of July. It feels like we're right on the brink of that. Obviously, there's been a little bit of pushback to some items of it. Now you're sort of stair-stepping down those roster limitations with which Kirk Ferentz wasn't particularly happy that basically they told some folks once upon a time that they didn't have a spot for them, and now maybe they do. Maybe we'll get a good story or two out there at Iowa where one of these players was basically told, look, we're not going to have those 125 spots. We're only going to have 105 roster spots. And now you've got it to where the revised proposal was to honor those players that basically got scholarship opportunities, got walk-on opportunities, got the rug ripped out from underneath them, got those opportunities taken away, which I think that is the right thing, though. Again, Kirk Ferentz at the end of spring ball was not particularly thrilled that it took this long. And technically, we're not through the we're, I guess, through the front door, but we haven't bought the house yet, so to speak, on that front. We're not done and into the revenue share era, but it certainly feels and sounds like that tweak right there to stair step down those automatic roster limits that was something that Judge Claudia Wilken really needed to see done, and it sounds like that's going to happen. And again, maybe there's good news on that front for the Iowa Hawkeyes, that one of these players that thought there wasn't going to be an opportunity at Iowa, maybe they wind up back at Iowa before we get fall camp underway. You'd love if that's the case. For Iowa, with that in mind, you'd like to have that happen like now, right? You're just about to get summer workouts underway. Summer workouts for the Hawkeyes begin at the beginning of June. So if that's going to happen, let's ratify this thing. Let's get this revenue share era going now, and let's get it signed, sealed, delivered to where you know that you've got those extra 20 plus odd spots at least for one season. And then maybe we could see a good story where somebody returns. And with a program like Iowa's, it's not crazy. It wouldn't be shocking to see a name out of left field that you don't suspect helping Iowa in some capacity. Maybe not in the largest of roles, but in a special teams capacity maybe. I don't need to tell you guys, the viewing audience, the listening audience, about the storied tradition of Iowa Hawkeyes walk-ons out there. So maybe there is one of those nice stories out there if this thing gets put into place sooner rather than later. Let's see. What was I going to get to here? I just had hit that one. Hawkeye Howard, if we play an SEC team, let's make it later in the year, like November or December, the colder part of the year. Howard, I don't think that is the way that they would do it. What do all of you out there, those of you that are hanging out, I see we got a wonderful crowd hanging with us. Thanks, guys, for being with us on Memorial Day and hanging out and, being with us here on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. What do you guys think about incorporating the bowl games in some capacity to something like that, the Big Ten SEC crossover? I know who's the old, is it Rick Neuheisel, the old UCLA head coach, that had sort of suggested that he wanted to incorporate the bowl games in some capacity in those, even if it's not your Big Ten SEC challenge, if it's just those early season, what you've had as, say, the Chick-fil-A college football kickoff, those types of games, right, where you have your big non-conference matchups, if you incorporated a bowl game there. What do you guys think about that? Would you like to see some of the bowl games get incorporated early in the season? I don't know that I'm crazy about that. It feels like the bowl game experience is maybe more and more becoming an item of the wayside, but that would be one way to keep it around, is to incorporate some of those bowl games, the less important bowl games, obviously your Rose Bowl and Fiesta and Cotton Bowl, Peach Bowl, the big ones out there. You're going to save those for the college football playoff, and they'll still be integrated that way like they have been. But I don't know, the Holiday Bowl, something like that, the Alamo Bowl, could you mix those in yeah, I don't know. That would be interesting, but that's all of which to say, Howard, that I think there's more discussion on maybe mixing a bowl game in at the beginning of the season as a kickoff game. I don't think you're going to see the Big Ten and SEC not playing its big respective conference games in those end of season months. I hear what you're saying, though. Iowa welcoming in, say, Alabama on that 1 year where you get the Alabama Crimson Tide, right? I mean, how fun would that be, welcoming Alabama in the very end of November, in a year where maybe the schedule rolls over and you got a December game, you bring them into Kinnick, or just late October and November, bringing some of those SEC schools up. Welcome to this Big Ten environment. A little bit different world of college football that you play in those months. And well, I guess we saw it play out similarly, right? Where Ohio State gave Tennessee a buzzsaw in the college football playoff. Now, I don't know that weather was the deciding factor in all of that, though Tennessee, right, tried to make its initial appearance, felt that there was no issues with the weather, but boy, they definitely ran into a buzzsaw with Ohio State, though everybody ran into an eventual buzzsaw with the national champion Ohio State Buckeyes. But it'd be fun to see some of those SEC schools have to try to come up and conquer Kinnick in those cold weather months. I think that's been the excitement for Hawkeye fans to some degree, right, with the West Coast schools, with UCLA and USC and Oregon and Washington. Come on down to Kinnick when the weather's not so fun and when football is truly Big Ten football, right? Where we can turn and hand the football off to a Caleb Johnson 20, 25 times a game, and we can load that box. And it's not as fun to throw the football in that cold weather environment. And we can lean on that front seven and really, again, make it an Iowa Hawkeyes Big Ten football game. I hear what you're saying. That'd be fun. I don't think that's the direction probably those crossover games would head. I think more than likely you're talking about, again, enhancing your early season ranking and getting a big litmus test game early in the season. Maybe that week right after you would traditionally play the Cy-Hawk game. If you're Iowa and you're thinking about, okay, how do we set up our schedule under that scenario? You clearly give me that easy layup game. Give me my I'll call it my knock the rust off game, my let's play everybody game. So you got that to start the season off with. Then you have your Cy-Hawk game. This, of course, that game out of the chutes, the Albany game in 2025 for Iowa. That's the type of game we're talking about there. The layup game, you got one of those, and then you got your Cy-Hawk game that rotates back and forth, and then maybe a crossover game with the SEC. It would be, again, fascinating to see if this doesn't rev the engines a little bit on the SEC, trying to, and maybe the Big Ten too. I say the SEC, it's not just the SEC that could expand to make the numbers match with, those crossover dates between the two conferences. Because right now, obviously, you got 16 teams in the SEC, you got 18 in the Big Ten. Does this open the door down the road and in the near future? Because it feels like a lot of this momentum is a snowball downhill, and it's not slowing down. It's picking up steam, and it's picking it up fast. Does this take the Big Ten in a direction to where it expands again? I do just feel like on some level, however you can structure schedules to see everybody on a regular basis. For instance, with the SEC and its 16-team setup, one thing that you like about expanding one thing that I like about expanding the conference schedule out to a 9-game conference schedule for the SEC is you can naturally get into that, what would be the 3-6-6 model, 3 permanent opponents that retains some traditional rivalries like we've seen with Iowa, with your Wisconsin game, your Nebraska game, your Minnesota game. You've got those 3 games as an SEC team that you keep. Got to have those games, right? Your insert rivalry here, your Iron Bowl, right? Obviously, you want to play that every single season. And then with those other 6 conference games, you rotate those opponents each season. So you got your 3-6-6 model, and you would see every conference team in the SEC over a 2-year span. And oh, by the way, it would set you up to host everybody once every graduation cycle, though, in the wild world of the transfer portal. Maybe folks aren't always sticking around for 4 years. So maybe hosting everybody once every 4 years as a player, not the same magic that it used to have. But for fans, right? I think for fans, when you can see opponents in your conference on a more regular basis, however you can get that accomplished, I think is something that you want to try to get accomplished. And the more you keep adding, the more you keep expanding, that gets trickier and trickier, or just flat out impossible to accomplish. So to me, I mean, that would be one drawback of if you keep ballooning these leagues out, you know, keeping those long-term rivalries that everybody cares about, balancing that with how the heck do we play everybody on a regular basis to make this league feel like a league. You know, for basketball, maybe it's a little bit easier to where you could just play, you know, maybe you don't host, maybe you don't go to and host every, you know, a couple of teams every single season, but maybe you just under a 20-team league, just play everybody, all of the other teams every single year. But that will be a bridge to cross on a later date. But one of the items that has been sort of interesting in this latest bit of the Big Ten and SEC proposals for a 16-team college football playoff. According to a Yahoo Sports report, and I should give proper credit to where it's due, dating back to Ross Dellinger from February, some of the latest reports is that the 16-team proposed college football playoff, it will include the play-in games for those 4 automatic qualifier bids to the Big Ten and the SEC. So if you're just joining us, welcome in. It's Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. I'm Josh Helmer. You can follow me at Josh on Ref. And please follow my work, not just here. Like and subscribe to the channel, Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. Share a super chat if you're so generous to support the channel. But follow us, like and subscribe here, and check out my work at HawkeyesWire.com, where there's a lot more Caitlin Clark coverage and Iowa football and basketball every single day with myself and the team over there. But one of the items was the play-in bids, which, oh, by the way, Iowa would have been in that mix last season. Iowa would have been the number 6 seed, and on conference championship weekend, the Hawkeyes with, I know at times you look at it and say, well, you know, offensively, the quarterback situation, did they deserve a crack at it? Well, I say if you're in that position and they go to this format, then absolutely you deserve to crack at it. And oh, by the way, when I've got Caleb Johnson in my backfield and hopefully a man in Phil Parker that's pulling the strings together and hitting the right buttons at the right time of the season with Nick Jackson, and obviously with Higgins back there, then maybe defensively you could push the right buttons at the right time. I'll take my puncher's chance to play into the college football playoff on that conference championship weekend, and that would have been at Iowa's fingertips a season ago. They would have been one of those teams. The most interesting part of this latest wrinkle, though, is that, you know, the initial thought when you heard expansion to a 16-team college football playoff was that, hey, 1 plays 16, right? 2 plays 15, and I probably don't need to continue this exercise all the way on down. That's not what the Big Ten and SEC want to do. That's not the latest proposal. The latest proposal is that basically, if you can think to the NCAA men's basketball tournament, this is the comparison that many out there are starting to make. This is almost like your first 4 meeting college football, which I don't know. I got to take some. I got to take some getting used to on that. The idea of a first four, I don't know that I'm totally crazy about for college football. I'm okay with expanding to 16 teams. I'm okay with that, though. Please, can we stop at 16? 32 teams do not need to be going to the college football playoff. At some point, teams that legitimately can win a national championship, there's not been historically 32 of those in college football. 16, okay, maybe there's one year where somebody in that, 13, 14, 15, 16 range, 14, 15, 13 through 16 range, maybe on a given year, there's somebody in that group that can go on a run, but probably not too likely. But a first four, essentially, to play into the college football playoff. So under this 16-team proposal that's out there, just going off how last year played out, number 13, Miami would have played number 16, Clemson, and number 14, Ole Miss would have played 15th seeded South Carolina. Those teams vying for the right to move on and play the, again, straight seeded 1 through 4, but the teams that get a bye, a double bye, number 1 Oregon and number 2 Georgia. So a different world, a double bye for the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the bracket. One thing, the first four to college football is a little weird. And again, it's going to take some getting used to for me. I don't know that I love it. I don't know that I hate 16 teams to the college football playoff. The one item that I do like about it is that double bye for the number 1 and the number 2 teams. That brings back, one of the big complaints, right? Everybody, was that the college football regular season, it's been devalued. The college football regular season, as we expand, we have taken away the value of the regular season of college football. We've removed the one thing that's the most magical about college football, and that's that upset, right? That random upset where Iowa, look out, Ohio State, welcome to Kinnick, and oh my goodness, it's a special one under the lights in Kinnick Stadium, and surprise, surprise, another thing coming for Ohio State, and all of a sudden your playoff hopes dramatically altered, or your national championship hopes outright ended with one game. That's what we loved about college football, right? That's what we loved, is the importance of every single week of the college football schedule. The double buys does bring that back into play to some degree, right? If you're the Big Ten champion, if you're the SEC champion, or if you're the even Big 12 or ACC champion on the right year with the right scheduling and the right set of players, then okay, you've got yourself a double bye in the college football playoff. So that's one part that I don't mind in this. And obviously the rest of it, 8 versus 9, 5 versus 12, the 15-14 winner would play the number 4 seed, 7 versus 10, 6-11, 13-16 versus the number 3. And last year it would have been Notre Dame. So that's an interesting development in some of this. So that is what now I guess you're monitoring, is not just the college football playoff expansion to 16 teams, but do you get to a situation, a scenario now to where you've got essentially a first 4 into the college football playoff, and you've got double buys in the college football playoff? Interesting. Definitely a wrinkle that is kind of crazy, a little bit out there. Hadn't really seen this proposed a lot as you heard about the 16-team model. I understand the logic between, again, adding more value into being a conference champion on that season where the Big 12 or ACC, if it is more top-heavy on a given season, this opens up the possibility of that rewarding double bye in the college football playoff. Others will feel maybe like this. Seth chimes in, we need to get rid of the conference championship games. I know some folks have said that. Howard, again, I don't like the buys in the playoffs. Seth, just crown the winner based on regular season and roll into the playoffs. So as in Big Ten, SEC, crown my champion before we go into the playoffs. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm putting too much value on these conference championship games. I still like playing for it. I know that one fear, and a legitimate fear out there, is that all of a sudden, if I know that I'm in the Big Ten championship game, I'm one of the 1s and 2s in the Big Ten and the SEC, we're automatically in that all of a sudden teams are going to be resting guys. And in this era of college football, we've already seen it with the bowl games. That's a legitimate concern. That's a possibility that teams don't take those Big Ten and SEC championship games as seriously. But with this double bye mixed in, you now have added a little more oomph on that Big Ten championship game, which I think is good for college football because, again, Seth, maybe I'm a sucker on this deal, but I still like the idea of settling it. I still like playing for the Big Ten championship. I know that now with the college football playoff being the way that it is, that the eye is on the big prize in that trophy that's not as good as the BCS National Championship trophy used to look like. But that's besides the point. I still like playing for a Big Ten championship. I still like playing for an SEC championship, Big 12 championship, ACC championship, whatever it may be. I still think there's value in that. And the double bye hopefully makes it to where teams and programs feel that way, that there's something to play for, extra rest to be had if you could win that game. But I certainly understand the critique, and I know that I don't think you're alone. A lot of people would agree with you that the importance of those conference championship games has already been removed. One of the other parts of this as well, I guess, that should be mentioned, and this will naturally, for some, not be something that folks are altogether excited about. I don't know that I hate it. I think so long as you set the stage early and don't have other games in this same television window, I don't mind it. But the CFP would start a week earlier with those 13 versus 16, 14 versus 15 games. So everybody waiting in what now would be the second round of the college football playoff would be playing the next week, and the 13 versus 16, 14, 15 game would open the college football playoff the week before. But, oh, by the way, it would be on the same weekend as the Army-Navy game. So that is going to be an item that for veterans and just for fans of college football that feel that Army-Navy game deserves its own weekend, its own platform, right? Its own grand setting to take the stage, that's going to be something that folks not everybody's particularly excited about. To me, I still think there's a way to have the Army-Navy game first, just boot your day off with that. Or if you want to mid-afternoon it, you can mid-afternoon the Army-Navy game. You have the early morning first college football playoff game. You got the final college football playoff game in that opening weekend on that Saturday night. Or, maybe you play a Friday game. Again, you get into some of the frustrations that people have out there on infringing on high school football. I know that's a touchy subject at times for some out there, but there's ways to move around those television windows to think about what makes sense to pay respect to the Army-Navy game, but at the same time, play the 13 versus 16, play the 14 versus 15 game of the college football playoff the week before. So interesting. That's really the big news in college football right now, is some of this movement on the college football playoff. We know official, the straight seeding that has been put into place. That's the case for next season. So how the college football playoff committee sees it, 1 through 4, those are going to be the teams that get the buys next year. And into the future, the teams that get the buys will be obviously just based on those straight seeds. And even under a 16-team model, if now you're one of the top 12 seeds, you're going to get a bye of some form or fashion. Now, teams 3 and 4, you're not getting a double bye like the number 1 and number 2 overall seeds in this thing, which, to me, I think the BCS national championship game, for the most part, taught us that, the BCS national championship game, I think, got it right in many instances that 1 played 2. And, sure, there was some debate about 3, 4, 5, 6, but a lot of years, most folks were happy that the computers and the pollsters ultimately got the thing right and got 1 versus 2 playing. That a lot of seasons, 1 versus 2, at least in the BCS championship era. And maybe this has changed now, and maybe you have to rethink your thinking on it with the transfer portal being what it is and the revenue share era being here, that maybe there is more parity in college football than there used to be. But for me, for my money, a lot of times in the BCS era, 1 versus 2 was kind of just right. 3 versus 4 and 5 and 6 on the outside looking in the national championship game. Probably a lot of years they were a cut below 1 versus 2. So, with that in mind, 1 and 2 getting a double bye, I think, I don't know. I like that part of it. I like the reward for the teams that historically have, over years in college football, been that maybe cut above and, have been the best teams all season long in college football. I like those teams getting a reward. And if you go through the rigors of the Big Ten and you're Iowa and it's that special season, then, knowing that you get a little extra time to rest, if you are the number 1 overall team going into the thing, or you are the number 2 team going into the thing, as a Hawkeye fan, you think that you'd like that, right? That you get a little reward, a little light at the end of the tunnel if you can go be a Big Ten champion. But obviously that's not done yet. The 16-team model, though, if you've been following a lot of this, I think recent history has basically told us that if the Big Ten, if the SEC wants something, probably the Big Ten and the SEC are going to get it. So I fully expect that if by as soon as 2026 or 2027, I think you're going to see a college football playoff where the Big Ten's got 4 automatic qualify bids into it, and you're going to have on conference championship weekend the 3 playing the 6 out of the Big Ten, the 4 playing the 5, and those teams are going to be playing for those final couple of automatic qualifier bids into this thing. I think you're going to see the Big 12 and the ACC say, okay, knowing that we've got a guaranteed couple of bids in, when our strength of schedule probably is going to be on a annual basis more difficult to match up versus the top 6, certainly the top couple of teams, top 4 teams in the Big Ten or the SEC. That's going to be more of an uphill battle to climb, knowing that we're getting 2. We know we've got 2. That's a payout that we're guaranteed to have. And, oh, by the way, on that year where we've got, maybe Kansas State wins the Big 12 and Iowa State has the season it had a season ago, and insert Arizona State, who of course won the Big 12 a season ago, and whichever other Big 12 school you want to toss into the mix, if they're truly on a year deserving, and if the Big 10 and the SEC have their scheduling alliance, I think the Big 12 and the ACC, the next step for them is they're going to have to work together to get their own non-conference scheduling alliance as well, to beef up those schedules, to give themselves an opportunity to pick off one of those final 3 at-large bids that are out there in this proposed new 16-team college football playoff model. So I think that, guys, is right around the corner. I've rambled a lot tonight on this Memorial Day talking college football playoff, which love talking college football with you any time of year. We're just about out of time on this edition of Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. We've had so many of you hanging out. Thanks, guys, for joining and hanging out with me. I hope you'll consider making this a regular Monday stop for you at 6 o'clock. Like and subscribe to the channel. Share a super chat if and when you're so generous. It, frankly, just talking ball with you, it makes doing the show worthwhile financially for myself, for Chris. So we appreciate, when you consider thinking about, a super chat for me and just to support the Voice of College Football channel. Caitlin Clark today, we got the bad news, out for a minimum of 2 weeks with a left quadriceps strain. Caitlin Clark had been dealing with a quad issue throughout the preseason and obviously missed that opening preseason game, if you'll recall. Came back and played in that game at Kinnick, inside Carver. I'm mixing up my venues, everybody. Sorry about that. It played in she did play at Kinnick once upon a time, the crossover at Kinnick. But in that preseason game inside Carver Hawkeye Arena, she came back and, physically has looked fine throughout the start of the season. But, unfortunately, now has the left quadriceps strain and won't be back for at least a couple of weeks. If you're the Indiana Fever, the prudent play is you got to give her as much time as she needs. She is too valuable, not just in 2025, but she's too valuable in 26 and 27. And for the next 15 years for that franchise, you can't rush this deal. You think about Caitlin Clark. She's been incredibly durable over the course of her career. Didn't miss games at Iowa. Didn't miss a game last season with the Indiana Fever. And now, unfortunately, is set to miss at least 4 if you look at that schedule ahead for the Indiana Fever. Caitlin Clark will be reevaluated on, I believe, June 9th. Is that the date? Yes, June 9th is the re-examination date for Caitlin Clark. Will miss definitely the next 2 weeks. And then will be re-examined. So that means 4 games for sure. We know no Caitlin Clark. Won't play at the Washington Mystics. Won't play versus the Connecticut Sun. Will miss another date versus Washington and a game at the Chicago Sky. The Fever would play the next day after that re-examination date for Caitlin Clark on June 10th. And then they would have dates coming up that the rest of that week versus the New York Liberty. So that would be kind of interesting, right? If she left, the final game before the injury was versus the New York Liberty, and then you return versus the reigning WNBA champion New York Liberty. Maybe that's a date that you circle, assuming that the recovery, that all of that is smooth and it goes well for Caitlin Clark. That would be on June 14th. So 2.5 weeks from now versus the New York Liberty, or that final game that week would be against the Connecticut Sun on June 17th. Caitlin Clark right now averaging 19 points per game, shooting 40% from the field, 31% from three-point range. Had been on a little bit in the midst of a little bit of a shooting slump before the end of that third quarter versus the New York Liberty. Obviously couldn't buy a three-point bucket in that win versus the Atlanta Dream, and missed the first 7 from beyond the arc versus New York, and then did connect on those final 2 of the third quarter to help Indiana turn a 15-point deficit early versus the defending champs into a 12-point lead early in the fourth quarter before Clark missed her final couple of three-pointers in the contest. And obviously the Indiana Fever scoring drought, can't go 4+ minutes without finding a bucket somewhere, whether it be from Clark or Aaliyah Boston had a wonderful game, but she was a part of that drought, and Howard and Kelsey Mitchell, everybody on that roster, they just couldn't buy a bucket for 4+ minutes in that fourth quarter. And as we see across sports, the champs are the champs, right? So champs aren't going away when they fall behind by double figures. And unfortunately, the Indiana Fever on Saturday learned what you hope is a valuable lesson for Caitlin Clark and company, that you got to keep playing versus the champs. You can't suddenly go cold for basically half of the final frame and expect to go beat Ionescu and those guys. They're pretty doggone good. But Clark, 19 points, 9.3 assists per game, 6 rebounds, 1.3 steals. I think she's averaging a block per game right now as well. I don't know that number continues over the course of this season, but the rest of it I think does or gets better. The shooting numbers you hope get better, and maybe that shooting percentage, when you start thinking about quadricep, leg problem going on, that probably to some degree the shooting numbers could have very well been impacted by just not being totally right health-wise for Caitlin Clark. So again, what I said, I think you don't rush this thing. 2 weeks would be great. You'd love to have her back ASAP. The Indiana Fever need her back ASAP, though obviously you've got a couple of all-stars in Aaliyah Boston, in Kelsey Mitchell. This is why you went out and got Natasha Howard and Dewana Bonner. This is why you got those guys, to try and improve this roster, not for the idea that Caitlin Clark's going to be out of the equation for an extended period of time, but just to make this roster better. And, oh, by the way, if one of these, players like Clark, like Mitchell, like Boston, if they're out for an extended period of time, that you've upgraded the roster a little bit. So, look, players are going to have to elevate their game while Caitlin Clark is on the sidelines here, so Indiana doesn't go tumbling down the standings a little bit. But you can't rush this thing if you're Indiana. You let her heal up as long as she needs to. If that's 2 weeks, if that's 3 weeks, if that's a month, that's obviously a big chunk of change of the schedule. But Caitlin Clark's way too valuable to rush that thing back. So hopefully her shooting percentages, hopefully we do see an uptick in that, and that part of this shooting slump was in some way, shape, or form tied to that quadricep strain. Kind of looked like maybe she had re-aggravated it in the final couple of minutes. She had one of those drives where she went in and got bumped, and I think was looking for a whistle, didn't get one. Go figure on that. And looked like maybe she came up a little lame on that drive late in the contest versus the New York Liberty. I wonder if maybe that's where she retweaked it, or maybe it's been a nagging injury over the course of this season, and she just re-aggravated it enough to where they looked at it and got the medical examination and said, yeah, we got to shut you down for a little bit. But that's bad news. Bad news for Iowa fans, and bad news for Caitlin Clark lovers and fans out there, that the WNBA, the Indiana Fever, are going to be without their biggest star for a couple of weeks. I will still be watching to see how Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell and company hold up. Boston, what a game that she had over the weekend. That was fun to watch. Maybe a couple more touches for her along the way, and maybe they win that thing versus the reigning champs. Unfortunately, they did not do. They did not do that. They were not able to find the dub versus the Liberty. Just a couple of your remarks. I know we're overtime. Go figure. If you've been a regular participant of this program over the lifespan of the last couple of months, this our 7th show, you realize that unfortunately, or fortunately, right, we all get to hang out a little bit longer. This is supposed to be a 1-hour show, and it's morphed into a little bit longer than that because go figure, somebody in the sports sphere here maybe likes to hear himself talk just a little bit too much. But hey, I wanted to mention Caitlin Clark before we got out of here. And now some of your remarks when you guys are hanging out with us. Really appreciate you guys jumping in here, hanging out with me on Iowa Hawkeyes Primetime Live. And when you do that, I want to make sure and read your comments before we get out of here. Seth, yes, it has. It's gotten so large. If you're the top 5 in the Big Ten, you're a really, really good team. That's a win. That'll be a new goal for most Big Ten teams. And Seth, I would say get into that top 6, right? Because if you're in that top 6 in the conference, then look, the way this thing's headed, you're going to be in that conference championship weekend play-in game, a couple of play-in games for the Big Ten. What about making the season start earlier, maybe starting the season in mid-August? That schedule retweaking could be a possibility at some point when, I know we don't talk about this a lot, but on these are student athletes, right? For many of these football players, there are final exams and classes to finish. I know we don't talk about that a lot, but Kirk Ferentz would certainly mention that to you, that these are student athletes, and, making the more you add to the schedule, at some point, something's got to give, right? I mean, you got to keep the school schedule in mind to some degree. You got to keep finals in mind to some degree. The SEC and Big Ten will have 9 of the top 15 teams next year. Yeah, maybe 11. I mean, that's going to be most years, Seth, that there's going to be years where the Big Ten and the SEC, if it goes to this 4 automatic qualifiers for the Big Ten, for the SEC, a couple for the Big 12 and the ACC, and that one of the Group 6 champion, and then 3 at-larges, the Big Ten and the SEC, they're going to be scooping up maybe all 3 of those at-large bids a lot of seasons. I think that extra conference game's too much for the players. I'd rather not have buys in the playoffs. This, Seth, I wanted to get to this comment. Do you get to a point, I mentioned earlier, the Albany game. I think, especially Kirk Ferentz, the dean of college football coaches, right? But old school coaches that have been around for a long time, they are going to push back against the idea that, wait a second, now I don't have my Albany game, I don't have my FCS game on the schedule, or my lower tier FBS group of 6 team to tune up to begin the season. If you go to 10 conference games and you're Iowa, so you have your Cyhawk game that you've got it built in, your in-state rivalry game. Okay, under 10 conference games, now I've got 11, and we get a crossover Big Ten SEC game. Well, that's my whole schedule. That's all 12. And I know TV networks probably at some point are really going to push for that. But look, there's certainly plenty of football programs out there that they need that stipend from the University of Iowa. They need that pay game from, Big Ten, SEC programs out there. But that could very well, Seth, be where this thing is headed in time, that basically you just don't have that tune-up game going forward. Let's see. Yes, unfortunately for the WNBA, the numbers, they're going to drop with Caitlin Clark out of the mix. There's no doubt that, the ratings, we're going to see that. There have already been some week 1 conference games. Yeah, I think that we've seen TV networks and conferences realize that let's get some what they call the 4 million club game, right? Isn't that what a lot of these TV execs have been looking at when they talk about realignment, expansion? Who's in that 4 million club? Which games, teams against one another, conference mates, if we get them in week 1, which get us into that 4 million viewership range club, or just bangers in general, right? Give me exciting conference games on week 1. That's a good thing to kick off the college football season. And we know that not just the Big Ten and the SEC, but TV execs, look, let's not fool ourselves. They're driving a lot of this, not just the Big Ten and the SEC, though. It sounds like Tony Petitti, the Big Ten commish, that was one other piece of this I didn't mention earlier. Sounds like he's kind of been maybe the biggest ringleader, biggest proponent of getting this 16-team college football playoff where you'd have the double buys. So with the 4 automatic qualifiers, obviously, as well to the Big Ten. So Tony Petitti has been a big-time bus driver of that, according to reports out there. That's kind of fascinating. Guys, I've got to get back to, I got to get back to writing and working on other things. But thanks for hanging out with me on a Monday. Hope, again, all of you had a happy Memorial Day. I know this is a day where we pay the ultimate respect to those that gave us the ultimate sacrifice. So to those of you that are veterans, have family members that have served, that have lost loved ones, we say God bless the USA, and thank you all for your service. And hope you all had a wonderful time with your loved ones. I know that obviously, this type of day off from work and this weekend where you're celebrating is done for many with a heavy heart. So if that's the case for you, we send our love, we send our thoughts, we send our prayers. That's going to do it for me. For my man Chris, who I don't know what he got into tonight, but he had something else that came up tonight. Thank you for making this a part of your regular Monday stop, and we'll see you next week. Everybody have a wonderful week, and so long, everybody.